Friends, this is the second lecture in my 10 lecture series on managerial sociology. And the first lecture was aimed at defining what I call managerial sociology, which lies at the interface between management thought and sociology. Now, the idea of managerial sociology would become more clear after attending the second lecture, in which I am trying to show the connection between development of society and development of managerial thoughts. Friends, broadly, I divide society into three stages. This is broad division. You can have a finer distinction, or you can use other frameworks. You can use sociologists like Comte or Spencer or Max Weber or Karl Marx or others to define stages of development, but I broadly define society into traditional, industrial and modern, and postmodern society. And I will show the corresponding ways of thinking or philosophies of management. So this is the content, and certainly this so-called scientific management, in which you include ideas of Ford, Taylor, Elton Mayo, Hertzberg, and so on, Fayol. They are part of scientific management. And before that, there were Greek and Roman thoughts, or there were other kinds of thoughts in Indian society. And if you look at the managerial thoughts today, then they are very different. They are quite often and very explicitly against the science movement. They take into consideration things like emotions and state of mind, or mental models, perspectives, frameworks, paradigms, spirituality, and many other types of questions, uncertainty, risk, and globalization, and things like that. There are some papers and books on which this presentation is based. Maybe those interested in knowing more about the subject can go through one or more of them. The basic tenet of sociology is that all human behavior is learned, and therefore all ideas and action patterns depend on the culture and structure of society. If all human behavior is learned and there is no biogrammar or instinct determining human behavior, some people will say that there is some element of influence of genes, but looking at the variety of human behavior, maybe 99.9% of human behavior is determined by learning, socialization, and very little of it is determined by biogrammar or genetic structure or purely biological, something purely biological. So most sociologists tend to ignore the biological factors. And although there may be, as I said, some minor influence of them on human behavior. So all ideas, and if I say all ideas, this also includes managerial thought, ideology of management, ideas, norm, fashion, attitude towards management thinking. They are also closely linked with structure of society. This presentation is about the ideas of management that developed with industrialization of society, starting 200 to 250 years ago in the West. A few years ago, I asked a senior US-based software manager how he manages his employees, and he said, I asked 3 questions and help them. What is one thing you are excited about? What is one thing you are concerned about? What is one thing you can do better to improve at your job? What is one thing you need from me to help you with your job? He called it ECIN model. Now this I'm giving you this example of ECIN model because I want to say that this is a model which may be working quite well in the context in which this manager is working. Microsoft, Seattle, United States, IT sector. All subordinates are technically qualified, specialized in IT, highly qualified. But you will agree with me that this model would not work in a master-slave kind of society, in ancient society, or in a traditional society in India, or when I say traditional society in India, I mean that Gautam Buddha, for example, could not have propagated his religion more effectively by using ECIN model. They had their own theory, they had their own model. And in the mainstream management theory, again, the terms like excitement, concern, and self-improvement or needs did not carry much weight in Frederick Taylor's scientific management, or in Fayol's principles, or in Elton Mayo's theory, or in Hertzberg's theory of hygiene and motivator. All of them, like Freud, who tried to apply the tools and techniques, methodologies of science to study of how can workers be made more productive. This is the perennial, the core question of management, how to make workers more productive in the age of industrialization and scientific management. That question or that approach would not work in traditional society. That approach would also not work in the age of globalization or free flow of ideas, capital, and human resources from one country to another. And in this age of uncertainty, disasters, pandemic, environmental problems, and chaos, political chaos, economic chaos, social chaos, you require a different theory of chaos. Understanding of science itself has improved a lot, from Newtonian physics to string theory. And if you say that management principles have to be based on science, which science? Somebody can ask, which science? Newtonian science or string theory or theory of subatomic parts? Which theory? So things have changed, and I show the correspondence between change in society and change in management ideas. Society has changed from a feudal or ancient society, undifferentiated society, feudal society. In India, Jajmani system, which had a command structure, collectivistic orientations, a different theory of control, to the postmodern or dynamic stage, which we will talk about uh, in future lectures. I think to understand developments in management thinking, this periodization by Bateman and Slane is of great significance. Bateman and Slane periodize evolution of management theory as follows: that in the beginning was systematic management in the second half of the 19th century, which means till the first half of the 19th century, there was no scientific management theory. It was all ideas based on religion, virtues, Greek and Roman ideas, or Shastras or tradition in India. Then scientific management in the beginning of the 20th century. The scientific management movement started in the beginning of the 20th century. Then model of bureaucracy as defined by Max Weber, based on rationality, hierarchy, written instructions, separation of interest of organization from interest of self, etc. Then administrative management, then human relations school, Elton Mayo, then quantitative management, that and today quantitative management influence seems to be rampant. All serious management journals publish papers based on serious and advanced econometric analysis, game theory, integral and differential calculus, analytical mathematics, and all sophisticated and advanced developments in mathematics and computer science. Then came the organizational behavior school, then systems theory, then contingency theory, and now we live in this phase when current and future revolutions in management theory can be comprehended. When we talk of traditional society in the West, for the ideas we depend on Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and his son. We also look at the movement from Greek thought to Roman thought, and then followed by scientific civilization in the second half of the 19th century, as I said. When we look at Indian or Eastern systems, we depend on oral tradition. We try to, there is no traditional understanding, there cannot be a traditional understanding of traditional man today. We all define tradition in a certain way, but common to Indian tradition would be oral tradition. Vedas are part of oral tradition, they are called Shrutis. Then Upanishads, then Smritis, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavad, and other Puranas, the Gita, followed by Mughal and colonial ideas. This is what happened in India before the advent of the Mughal and then the British colonial rule. The Greek philosophy talks about virtues. For Aristotle, the work of a manager is to contemplate, participate in politics, get wealth, acquire, own, and direct slaves, and delegate execution to his subordinates. Now, kind of theoretical understanding that our software manager of this century, early 21st century, reflects would not work in Aristotle's time. So Aristotle had to have a different kind of thinking. Aristotle's conception of the vertical division of work between master and subordinates does reflect the historical context of his work, because this was the kind of society in which he lived. So in his thoughts, he reflects on this. His methods are authoritarian, and Aristotle's treatise on household management has the most direct bearing on management. Household was the model, management of household was the model for management arising for Aristotle. What are virtues? The virtues Plato could think of are four. You can translate them into leadership qualities in the scientific management framework: wisdom, justice, fortitude, and temperance. And Aristotle talked of 9 virtues. 5 more virtues are added: wisdom, prudence or farsightedness, justice, fortitude or courageousness, courage, liberality, magnificence, magnanimity, temperance, self-control, translating into good life, living well, getting along with others, self-respect, and being part of something one can be proud of. So something close to meaning or self-esteem, or we can use new terms for them. But while Plato talked in terms of 4 values, Aristotle talked in terms of 9 values, 9 virtues that the some kind of employer or owners or owners of means of production, owners of wealth, or entrepreneurs, or heads of the household. For Aristotle, this was the model. So they must reflect these values. You can talk about their relevance or irrelevance in modern age, but this is how the traditional mind works. And a similar approach was used for politics, for constitutions, state, monarchy, tyranny, aristocracy, oligarchy, constitutional government, and democracy. This is the household model that Aristotle used, that at the top of this figure is master of household, then slaves. Slaves are divided according to functional specialization. There is conjugal department, there is paternal department, and there are artisans and manual work whose status is different from that of slaves, and they are to be given more freedom, more independence, more opportunity to think creatively as compared to slaves whose work is routine. Now, there are similarities between Greek and modern management theory. There are also dissimilarities. You can look into this. And there are similarities on qualities like group management, justice, fairness, valor, and rejection of vanity. Dissimilarity on use of craft, that modern thought being influenced by French Revolution, ideas of equality, democracy, fraternity, does not approve of Machiavellianism, which means manipulation, using fraud, shrewdness in manipulation or management of workers and work. The modern thinking is based on equality, empathy, concern, values, human rights. So there is a dissimilarity. There is also dissimilarity in concept of man, because these traditional writers thought in terms of innate qualities, while modern writers relate human qualities to social structure, institutions, culture, environment, social environment, political, legal aspects of business. There is dissimilarity that in traditional society, there was no possibility of vertical movement. People could move only horizontally from one status to another similar status, but not to superior or inferior status. There was no vertical upward or downward mobility. And a modern society, on the other hand, is based on open system, which accepts and encourages upward movement of people from lower classes to upper class. In ancient India, the virtues were like theory of one being, Brahman, Varnashram Dharma. Varna is the character of the group or collectivity. There is collectivistic orientation, which emerges from Varna Dharma. Ashrama is the stage of individual's life. And Purusharth, a man, a worker, a workman, an adult, or a responsible person, a sane person in senses, must pursue Purusharth, Dharma, Arth, Kam, and Moksha. Must pursue Dharma, must pursue Arth, or collection of material wealth or power, may be given to fulfillment of desires, but all in the framework of moksha. The overall framework of Indian society has been moksha, framework of moksha, which applies in some or other form to all types of Indian thinking. Hindu, Jain, Buddhist, all kinds of things. Dharma, Arth, and Kam, however, should not be inconsistent with moksha, because moksha is the larger circle within which other things are pursued. The framework of social organization, as per the writings of Prabhu, include shastras, define duties and responsibilities as per varna and stage of life, brahmacharya, grahast, vanprasth, and sannyas. There is more emphasis on action than fruits or karma phala. So one is expected to go for nishkam karma. And the idea is that results depend on karma and dev, destiny, caused by destiny is the destiny is some kind of prarabdha or something which is caused by the actions done in the previous birth. Indians believed in the idea of causality. Even Buddha believes in idea of causality, although he does not believe in soul and rebirth in the same sense in which Hindus believe, but he believes in the theory of karma and causality. Pratitya samutpad, causality, pratitya samutpad, Buddha would say. We know that the reality consists of avidya, ignorance, asmita, attachment with the body, dvesh, conflicts. So life world of ours, society and our own life are full of avidya, asmita, dvesh, and avinivesh, or love of life and fear of death. But the values which can help us in dealing with these things, encountering these realities of life, are Kevalyam. I would translate Kevalyam in English into onlyness. Brahma is the only reality. Brahma realization is the only purposeful goal or meaningful goal of life, from which Maitri, Karuna, Prem, and Upeksha, these are Buddhist values, but because I do not believe that at the level of fundamental philosophy there was any difference between Hindu, Jains, and Buddhists, so I am combining them. Kevalyam taken from Hindu philosophy and Karuna, Prem, Upeksha, Maitri taken from Buddhist philosophy. For practicing, for ordinary householders in India, perhaps basic ideas, belief systems were formed. And everybody, all philosophies in India talked about Nishkam Karma. In a wonderful book, Spirituality and Management, Means or End, S.K. Chakravarti attempts to develop a theory of management based on Indian philosophies, and this book contains 12 independent essays which draw heavily from Gandhi, Tagore, Aurobindo, Vivekananda, and others. If you also wish to attempt, because of your liking or whatever reason, if you want to attempt a traditional theory of management in the Indian framework, maybe you can also draw from Gandhi, ideas of Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore, Aurobindo, and Swami Vivekananda. But obviously, this theory will be normative. Subhash Sharma has developed one such theory, and many religious gurus are talking of management theories in this framework, and they are normative. They are not scientific or empirical. There is emergence of a new society in the second half of the 18th century, which you can call industrial society. And here are mentioned some characteristics of Indian society, industrial society. Sorry, not Indian, industrial society. Changeover from guild to market, establishment of industries at a specific location, push-pull factors of migration, breakdown of community norms because of push and pull factors of migration leading to new forms of living and new institutions, new forms of activities, often also having their side effects in the form of poverty, unemployment, overcrowding, high death rate. Ironically, industrialization in the West in the early phases did not make improvement in lives of all people. It produced wealth, but it also led to contradiction. And Karl Marx rightfully said that wealth and poverty are two sides of the same coin, because in the early phases, industrialization in the West created both wealth for the owners of industry and poverty and unemployment and high death rate, high infant mortality, diseases, sickness, epidemics for the working classes. Then in industrial society comes a disinterested or alienated worker. And in this context, you can see what kind of scientific management theory will develop. There is a division of labor, cultural rationalization, factory system, mechanization, universal application of scientific methods. You know, this idea, the ideas of science were so influential, so rampant, that everybody, even those who worked in the field of economics, in the field of philosophy, in the field of culture, anthropology, biology, psychology, they believed that by application of scientific method, and by scientific method they mean empirical, dispassionate, evidence-based, value-neutral, empirical, experimental methods, you can develop a new form of knowledge. So while application of science gave rise to something called sociology, a scientific study of society or human behavior, or positivistic or quantitative sociology. In the field of management, it gave rise to a thinking that human work can be scientifically studied, divided, split, and rearranged for the increase of productivity, from which both owners of industry or manufacturers and the working classes will benefit in the long run. Bureaucracy and mobility and the idea of deferred gratification, going with modernity. These are ideas which shape the scientific management theory. People move to urban areas, but that is not all. The culture of industrialization or scientific rationality or organization that moves from cities to villages also. So the whole society becomes rational, individualistic, and society is in need of organization based on scientific principles or empirical experimental studies of society. And the idea of modernity comes, which is best expressed by Alex Hinkels. His paper was published in American Journal of Sociology in 1969. This study in Alex Hinkels and D.H. Smith collected data from 6,000 people across 6 countries: Argentina, Chile, India, Israel, Nigeria, and East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, and arrived at certain characteristics of modernity. So, like openness to new experience, assertion of increasing independence from the authority of traditional figures like parents and priests, belief in the efficacy of science, ambition for oneself and one's children, or aspirations, like people to be on time, orientation for time, planning, interest, and taking active part in civic and community affairs, and to strive energetically to keep up with the news. Kingsley Davis, a pure sociologist, and talks about management philosophy to resolve as a philosophy to resolve conflict over surplus resources. I am skipping this slide. This shows that scientific management has to be in congruence with the principles or ideas of modernity or science, ideas of science. They must use mathematical and statistical tools, experimental and survey methods, observations. And 2 big names in this context are Tyler and Mayo. They raise the question, can work be scientifically designed? Assume that individuals work as individuals, which is best expressed in the Reville hypothesis of Mayo, which assume that all of the workers in a plant are unrelated individuals, or that their relations are only those which are specified on the chart, that as individuals they think and act logically in a manner calculated to promote their self-interest, that the motive of the individualistic, rational, and selfish behavior is to promote the economic well-being of themselves and the enterprise. And he conducted several studies, bank wiring, room experiment, and other experiments. These are some of the findings that he arrives at. You can look at this slide. His findings generated a lot of scientific interest in management and managers' interest in experimental design and survey. The studies showed that work motivation is a function. That is the crux of his theory, that work motivation is a function of a wide variety of factors, including pay, social relationships, meaning, interest, and attitude. Mayo differs from Tyler and others who developed the scientific management movement in the sense that he gives more importance, or at least as much importance, to social relationships, group norms, meanings, interests, and attitudes as to rationality or to motivation caused by expected financial or wage rewards. So money is not everything. For Mayo, money is not everything. Group norms are the most important aspect of productivity. People tend to conform to group standards. Now, scientific management assumes, we'll talk about scientific management and other schools more in future presentation, future lectures. But scientific management assumes that organizational goals are clear, they can be expressed objectively. Most of the time it is to raise productivity, to raise profit, which can be in principle shared with workers to raise their standard of living subsequent. Management is separated from ownership. Yeah, this is another important. And this becomes more vivid in postmodern theory. That there is one who controls the resources, and there are others, consultants, experts, based on their degrees, diplomas, experience. They act as experts or as management consultants. They are separated from ownership, which was not the case in the initial phases of shift from guild system to enterprises. The working of a man is homologous to working of a machine. This is another assumption of scientific Taylor's kind of philosophy, which has been questioned later. Management follows certain rules which affect the outcome. These rules can be studied scientifically, and scientific rules can be used to make an organization more efficient, better. Incentives, scientific designs, and consultants matter. Management principles should be acceptable and feasible. Even Lenin is believed to have accepted the theory of scientific management for raising productivity of workers in Russia. Although not in so obvious terms, because he cannot deviate from the theory of Marxism. But yes, he appreciated the ideas of Frederick Taylor and the scientific management movement in the capitalist part of the world of market economy. So this also shows that scientific thinking has some limitations from which, or from critique of scientific thinking, another kind of management practice is coming into being. You can call it dynamic management, postmodern management, working under uncertainty, change management, team leadership, in various forms, new kinds of theories based on hermeneutics, based on highly advanced econometrics models, and all kinds of theories, all kinds of reactions are coming. And that man is not a machine. This is one limitation of scientific management theory, which scientific management assumes. Works with symbols and interprets the stimuli. So cultural postmodernism. Postmodern theory would be closer to cultural postmodernism rather than economic postmodernism. And we'll also say that emotions should not be ignored, that human behavior is governed as much by practical considerations or as much by reward systems as by emotions. Sociology of emotions is as important as sociology of motivation. Culture is the biggest force to shape human action. A man has needs other than money also. Need for achievement, need for affiliation, need for power. Man looks for peace, satisfaction, and happiness, looks for solutions to everyday problem. This everydayness of problems also leads to a shift from scientific theory to what we broadly call postmodern theory, which is difficult to define because you cannot make postmodern or anti-science or post-science theory a purely scientific. Only hints can be given. So that example which I gave from my discussion with the software manager, this theory, this is neither traditional nor modern. It does not reflect the theories of Aristotle or Greek or Roman theories. It does not reflect the Hindu theories of Varnashram Dharma or Purusharth. It does not reflect the theories of Frederick Taylor or Alton Mayo or Payol or other people. We will talk about them in future lectures. It's a new kind of hodgepodge. This postmodern is hodgepodge. This is a hodgepodge and which is open, which cannot be defined in terms of simple formulae. Now we deal with different situations. Perhaps even this idea of software manager will not work in all kinds of situations. It will not work in a political party. It will not work in the Muslim women's organizations in Lucknow who are trying to improve the condition of Muslim women. It will not work in university organizations where in place of workers we have students. So global networks of environmental movements, this theory will not work in environmental movements. For that we need a different kind of theory of networks and in which role of media becomes particularly important, and domestic servants of today to sell by a self-employed person in the informal sector. When I define organization, then people often ask a question, can an organization be based on one person? Those who wrote on organization theory in scientific age or in the framework of scientific management could not visualize that a time will come when many enterprises will take the form of self-employment of one-person organization. So this one-person organization, this is an interesting topic, and maybe some PhD students can work on one-person organizations of today, their problems, their approaches, what makes them effective or ineffective, their risks. And scientific management will also not work perhaps under Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act promoted self-help groups and schemes in rural areas. And in new public management of services of health, education, geriatric care, providing health care to elderly population at home, and in variety of other contexts. So this 30-35 minutes is not enough to deal with each and every point regarding relationship between sociology and management. But what I've tried to say that the philosophy of management is a constantly changing thing. It depends on business philosophy, the context, what is to be managed, who are your subordinates, what is to be management. What is to be management means what kind of subordinates, profile of managers and profile of subordinates, therefore, legal and political environment of business, economic environment, social institutional framework, impact of globalization, and expectations of the employees from the work they do. And many more things can be included, role of media and so on. Obviously, this will not be a simple theory. This will be complex, hodgepodge, maybe not so well integrated, but you need such a theory for managing the organizations of today, large organizations, in which to produce something is to involve hundreds and thousands of organizations worldwide. 19th and 20th century world manufactured objects, for example, cars by several countries. This epoch of social development also produced the concept of capitalism. You know, the world is changing fast from manufacturing to service, differentiation to de-differentiation, globalization, mobility, society, escapes or networks of objects, technology, intelligence. This requires change in the concept of manager, managerialism, and management. We will have opportunity to ponder on them in this series of lectures. And for this kind of thinking, we will use the term postmodern management. Friends, let me summarize in 1 or 2 minutes that what I have tried to say, that as society has evolved from traditional phase to industrial phase, and from industrial to post-industrial or global or post-capitalist or phase, theories of management have also changed. So theories of traditional society can be understood like in terms of frameworks of Aristotle, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, and in case of India, in readings of religious texts, Vedas, Smritis, Upanishads, and Ramayana, Mahabharata, Gita, and people have tried to do that kind of. Then comes the industrial society, industrial phase, and beginning early part of 20th century, means about 100 years ago, slightly more than 100 years ago, when industrialization matures and spreads to colonial societies, to Asia, Africa, Latin America, the scientific movement in management comes into being, and work is studied by using experiments as in science, or experiments or surveys or observations, but in a scientific manner, objective, value neutral, dispassionate, and so on. Then as the nature of society has changed and we enter the postmodern phase, we need a more hodgepodge, local, complex, and a different kind of theory, which can broadly be called postmodern theory of management. And we will talk about these theories in subsequent lectures. Thank you. We stop here today.